What's going on, everybody? Adam here. Haven't made many videos here in the last few years. Started talking to some old YouTube buddies from way back in the day in TTC days. Thought I'd start making some videos again. Figure this is as good a time as any. So just stay tuned. I'm gonna make more videos. If you like them, subscribe. If you don't, appreciate you watching. But I'll just give you a rundown of what I'll be talking about from here on out. Football. College football, basically. I love college football. Obviously, I'm an Alabama fan. Born and raised, that's how I'll die. I'll talk about the playoff coming up. Some of the bowl games, stuff like that. College football in general. Just go ahead and start right now. Playoff rankings came out last night. This is the next to last playoff championship weekend coming up. So a lot to still be decided. Although I think 3 of those 4 teams are already solid in the playoff. So being Georgia, Michigan, and TCU. Barring TCU doesn't get blown out by Kansas State, but I just don't see that happening. But there's a chance. USC at 4 and Ohio State sitting there at 5. Of course, as an Alabama fan, I wanted Alabama to get in the playoff, but I'm realistic also, and Alabama the team is not good enough to be in the playoff this year. Alabama fans that, dream big, I guess you could say, are saying, we could have gone 12-0. Well, we could have gone 8-4 also. 4 close games, 2 we won, 2 we lost. So, I'm not worried about Alabama. Alabama's still going to get a good bowl game. But there's still a question at 4 or 5. USC, if they lose, they're probably out, and Ohio State probably slides in. I just don't see USC staying in even if they lose by 1 point to Utah. However, I do think that USC is going to beat Utah next Saturday, or I think it's Friday night. Sorry, Pac-12 championship. And I think the playoff is set already. I think Ohio State, Alabama, Tennessee, all going to be outside looking in. And the only question is, are the 4 teams in there going to stay in the same spot they are now? I think there's a small chance that if TCU lost a close game and USC won, they could slide into the 3rd spot and TCU would fall to 4. But I don't see Georgia and Michigan losing either of their championship games this coming weekend. So I think they're going to stay at 1 and 2. So with that being said, I think your playoff is set. TCU, USC, neither one have been in the playoff before. Michigan, this will be their 2nd time. Georgia's been there, 3 or 4 times already. So Georgia's experienced in the playoff. Michigan was there last year, got beat. But this is their 2nd trip. And TCU, USC, this will be their first appearance in the playoff. So I think it's good for college football to have some different blood. Of course, like I said, I want Alabama to be in there, but I know it gets tiring to other fan bases when you say the same 4 or 5 teams every year. Usually Georgia, Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, sometimes Ohio State. It does get tiring seeing that when you're a fan of a different team. And I think it's good for college football that TCU and USC get in, barring USC doesn't collapse on Friday night. So I think it's good for college football. I think it'll be a more highly rated college football as far as TV ratings go, just for the simple fact USC is a blue blood. Maybe not TCU, but it is a Texas school. They've got a pretty loyal fan base. They're going to have a lot of viewers, but USC is a blue blood, and whether they play Michigan or whether they play Georgia, depending on where they're seated, they're going to bring a lot of eyes to the TV screens in the playoff. So I don't think that, and I think it will bring other people in of other teams that would normally watch, because it's the same old boring 4 or 5 teams in the playoff. So I think it's going to be good for college football. It's going to be good for TV ratings. So as far as that goes, there you go. It's going to be a good playoff. I do think that Georgia is the best team in the country. I do think they're going to win the national championship. I just think their defense is the difference between them and the other three teams. I just don't see I don't see any of those offenses being able to beat Georgia's defense. USC, I think, could score. Caleb Williams, I think, is going to win the Heisman. If they played USC, I do think that USC would be able to score on them, but I don't think they'd be able to score enough on Georgia's defense. I think that would be the difference throughout the playoff, in the semifinal and the national championship game. Georgia will be there. The question is, are they going to be playing TCU, Michigan, or USC? Just depends on how it's seeded. I do think it'll be Georgia and Michigan, and I think Georgia's defense is just better than Michigan's offense, and I think it's going to be the difference. Georgia is 12-0 going into the playoff. Second year in a row, Georgia has been undefeated in the regular season. They did have that loss to Alabama in the SEC title game last year, but came back and got revenge on them in the national title game. So, you know, and that's their only loss in the last 2 years, which is it's amazing in the landscape of college football these days. So, hats off to Georgia. I got to give it to them. And I got to give some props to Michigan. I am not a big Jim Harbaugh fan. And a couple of years ago, even the start of last season, Michigan fans were trying to get rid of Jim Harbaugh because it did seem like he was underperforming, considering that he was in the NFL and came to Michigan with a lot of high expectations, and he didn't live up to them until really last year. But he's come a long way. Got Michigan to the playoff last year, got Michigan to the playoff this year. Whether they win the national title, I doubt it, but still, that's a pretty great accomplishment for Jim Harbaugh, and I'm sure Michigan fans are happy at this point that they have him as the coach, considering this will be their second year in a row they've been in the playoff. So good for them. Really, I'm just excited. Alabama, of course, probably headed to the Sugar Bowl, probably against Kansas State, and that's fine with me. Like I said, don't want them in the playoff? Of course, that's what we want every year. One undefeated season, one national championships every year. That's the expectation in Alabama. But reality is that's just not going to happen every year. It literally just does not happen every year. And 10-2, it's a good season. Regardless of what you think, what your opinion is, 10-2, even for Alabama, it's a great season. And you know, I hate seeing some of the people trashing Alabama and talking shit about Alabama like they just underperform. Well, yeah, they did underperform, but I don't think it was all the players. Of course, I think it was coaching. And I'm not saying Nick Saban. I'm saying coordinators, Bill O'Brien, Pete Golding. You can say what you want to about them. I think they underperformed this year. Bill O'Brien, yes, offense still, 40 plus points a game, I believe, off the top of my head, something like that. But just, if you're looking at game to game, his ability to make adjustments, or I'll just give it to you, he's in love with the pass. You saw Nick Saban even yelling into that headset in one of the games this year, run the fucking ball. Yeah, Alabama's run game is not what it was. Don't have a Brian Robinson like you did last year. Don't have one of your classic Derrick Henry or Najee Harris, or insert any dominant running back that Alabama's had in the last 12, 13 years. And we just didn't have that this year. Well, we did have Jahmyr Gibbs coming in from Georgia Tech. Did a great job, I think. He leads the team in not only rushing, but in receiving yards. He came in. He is a dual threat playmaker, not quarterback, but playmaker. Did good. I think he did a good job. I just really honestly don't think that Bill O'Brien used him to his full capability, because he wanted Jahmyr Gibbs to run in between the tackles. And Jahmyr Gibbs he's not one of your power backs that's going to run through one of the A gaps constantly. He's just not going to do that. He's, you want to get him outside. You want to get him in space where he can create his own plays. cut, one step, and gone to the house. And he did prove that, you know, first half of the season. But Bill O'Brien, for whatever reason, wanted to use him between the tackles. When we had Jason McClellan, Roydell Williams, not power backs like your Brian Robinson, your Derrick Henry, whatever. However, as far as this team goes, they are the power backs. Jason McClellan has done a great job in the last 4 or 5 games. He's actually probably had more carries than Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, was dinged up for a week or two and played sparingly. But, you know, Jason McClellan came in, did great, good job running in between the tackles when they needed some tough yards. Roydell Williams did the same a couple of times, scored some big touchdowns for him, especially Jason McClellan. I just don't think Bill O'Brien is the right fit for Alabama. He's in love with the pass, and I know this is college football has transitioned into a pass-happy league, just like the NFL has. Your spread option or spread offenses going 4 or 5 wide. Well, the problem with that is Alabama's receivers. If you watched any of Alabama games, either receivers dropped the ball, but the main thing was they could not get open. Whether I don't know if it was scheme. I just don't, you know, if the potential is there, maybe just not living up to it. They did play a lot of freshmen this year at receiver, which they have done in the past. Devontae Smith, Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy come to mind, but none of those players are on this team this year. There is talent there. Isaiah Bond, Kobe Prentice, they had some big catches this year. But just today, Trayshawn Holden is entering the transfer portal. You know, he's made some pretty big catches. He had some big drops this year also. So not a huge surprise. Christian Leary also entered the transfer portal. And I had high hopes for him. I watched a lot of his high school film, and I don't know if he just couldn't get on the field for whatever reason. I don't know if he was practice. I don't know what it was. Also entering the transfer portal. So don't like seeing that, but it's probably going to be addition by subtraction at this point. Transfer portal plays a big part in college football now. As you see, Jahmyr Gibbs, last year, Jameson Williams for Alabama, came up huge. Jameson Williams is one of the best dynamic receivers in all of college football. Probably the most dynamic receiver in college football last year. No, he didn't win the Biletnikoff, but as far as playmaking ability and being able to just take the top off the defense, Jameson Williams was probably the best in the country last year. But Alabama's team this year just don't have any of those guys. Maybe they do have those guys, but they haven't shown up yet. Maybe they're freshmen. Maybe they're sitting on the bench. Who knows? But, you know, if Nick Saban saw something in those guys, they'd be on the field. I mean, if they were showing out in practice, they'd be on the field. So that's just how it goes. I think for next year, Alabama's receiving. I'm going to guess that they're going to bring in through the portal, probably bring in some kind of big time receiver. Of course, you never know. I don't know that for a fact, but it worked out. We've done that two times. Jameson Williams obviously was one of the best wide receivers in college football last year. This year, Jermaine Burton comes in from Georgia. Hasn't lived up to the hype, in my opinion. He's made some catches this year, but I just don't. I knew coming in, I saw him at Georgia. Of course, Georgia's not a big pass-happy offense anyway, but I saw enough of him at Georgia that when he transferred to Alabama, I didn't get my hopes up, and for good reason, because he hasn't lived up to. I don't even know how many yards he has this year, but he hasn't had near as many catches as most Alabama fans would have thought or had wanted for somebody coming from a highly touted program like Georgia. But it is what it is. As far as the defense for Alabama goes this year, Pete Golding, he's got to go. I don't know how else to put it. Of course, most Alabama fans, myself included, we want the defense to be what it was 10, 12 years ago. You know, dominant defenses, even as like 4, 5, 6 years ago. But the reality of it is that it's just not going to be that, because with the way that college football is played today, spread offenses, just high-powered offenses now, you're not gonna be able to stop everybody all the time like Alabama. Some of Alabama's championship defenses did in the past. So, but with that being said, there's been, with the exception of a few games where we're playing inferior opponents like Vanderbilt, Alabama's just not played good on defense at all. Secondary has been gashed all year, and that's been a problem for the last few years. Really couldn't get any pressure on the quarterback as much as I thought coming into this season we would. I was actually pretty excited about this defense this year, but it hasn't lived up to it. And I don't think it's all the players' fault. I just think that it's the scheme of Pete Golding. I just don't think he's a good defensive coordinator. I don't think he's good enough to be at Alabama. I don't think he's good enough to be at Alabama's defensive coordinator anymore. Of course, we expect championship, and 10-2 is a great season. But at Alabama, of course, we're spoiled because Nick Saban's been here. This is like his 16th year, I think, and 6 national titles and a boatload of SEC titles, and we're just spoiled. So there is that expectation here for Alabama fans. And I think Nick Saban has that expectation also of his coaches and his players, coordinators, what have you. So with that being said, while 10-2 is a great season, and I'm happy to hit the 10-2 season, 10 wins. I don't know how many years in a row that's 10 wins for Alabama. 13, 14, 15, whatever. There's not many programs that have done that in the past, if any. However, the players just seemed out of position all year, especially in the secondary. The Tennessee game, he never made any adjustments. Jalen Hyatt for Tennessee scoring 5 touchdowns should not have happened. No matter, yes, he's probably the best he's probably the best wide receiver in college football, but he should not have gotten past DeMarco Hellams 5. He just didn't make any adjustments. DeMarco Hellams was burned so many times, and I just don't think it is all his fault. I think it was the scheme. He wanted to drop 8 constantly. Even if you're dropping Will Anderson into coverage and you're barely blitzing at all throughout the game, you got 3 rushing the passer. Of course, Hendon Hooker could use his legs. And you see how many passing yards he had. He had 5 touchdowns. I'm sure he had 300 and something passing yards, maybe 400. And while Bryce Young did have more passing yards and kept us in that game, of course we lost, but it never should have been that way. It just never should have been that way. And it's been like that throughout the season, barring a few games to inferior opponents. I just think that Pete Golding is out of his element at this point. I don't think the players are responding to his schemes. And you see Will Anderson has fallen off this year. Dallas Turner's fallen off this year. Not saying that they've had terrible seasons. They haven't completely disappeared. But the expectation for both of those guys coming in this year, they just haven't lived up to it. And I think you can place a lot of blame on Pete Golding. So, that is what it is. That's going to do it for me for right now. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button. I'm going to start making more videos. If you like it, like I said, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and I will holler at y'all later. Leave comments down below. I appreciate you watching.